Okay, tell everybody about your journey. How did you discover that business and ministry weren't separate, that they could work together?
It kind of came by accident. A few things happened. One thing early on in ministry, it was sort of when Facebook was first getting started. I helped a lot of ministries, some as volunteer, some like small stipend, get established on Facebook. And
Yeah, you're super techie. That's the other thing.
Well,
Yeah.
I'm good at, I guess, frontward facing ways to communicate to people. And so I don't necessarily know like the ins and outs of all the hardware stuff, but I knew how to create a message that would resonate with people
Yeah.
online. And I helped a lot of ministries and churches start doing that. And some ministries would come and hire me, and then I would help in that way. And so I'd kind of always had a few churches or ministries that I was working with, no matter what I've been doing in ministry. But when I got really sick with COVID and I was sort of bedridden for a long season,
Yeah.
I had to try to figure out, what am I going to do that's still meaningful that I
Mm-hmm.
can do from this place. And I ended up coming alongside a business startup at that time, and we ended up developing their entire ecosystem from a digital perspective. That company grew to hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue, and we helped influence that. And so I started feeling like this could legitimately be, a source of revenue that sustains me in this season. And then it became something more than that.
It's incredible because you look for, one of the things you showed me was, have you ever looked at your digital footprint online? And I was like, no. I mean, there's millions of teachings out there and everything's just out there. And you showed me how you can pull together and synthesize all of this pieces and parts of who you are that's out there floating around.
Yep.
And you can literally see what kind of impact you're making online.
Right.
And we talk about digital imprints not because we're looking to be popular. It has nothing to do with it. It's about the gospel, being able to get the glorious gospel of Jesus out through media. And I was just on somebody's podcast yesterday, and I said, we've got generations that are being discipled by media.
Yeah.
And the church needs to wake up.
Yep.
Because every day when I'm traveling, which is, how much I travel, everybody's on a device on the plane, and they're scrolling and scrolling and scrolling. And this is what they're intaking is discipling them.
Yeah.
And so you are one of the solution makers for how to help churches and individuals who have platforms to synthesize and creatively communicate so that they are able to disciple a generation for Christ.
Well, even this podcast is almost a byproduct of that in the sense that it's not that you didn't want to do it or it wasn't on your heart, but it helped confirm something that was in you already.
Right.
So what I was able to do is I created a method that we call core codes, that these are 7 parameters that we can evaluate a brand influencer, a church on, to say, how do you look and feel across these?
Yeah.
And then we have software that are listening tools that can go and find anything that's ever been spoken or said about you or your ministry in confines of those things. And from that, build a score of 1 to 100 on how well you're doing. And then a 6-month vision and a 5-year vision of, hey, if you really want to ramp it up based on what the audiences are doing and responding to you, here's where you can go and what you can do. And then for you, one of the things was, you could increase your reach digitally and impact more lives through having a podcast. And so that's one of the things that we're able to do. It's pretty proprietary, and it's not something we could go tell somebody to go do, but it's a tool that I've learned to use to help people. And
So if somebody wanted to find out more about that, if let's say somebody's listening to this and they're like, man, I could really use that consulting from, how can they find out more about
they just send me an Instagram message. It's
okay.
Pretty cool way to do that.
Okay.
Tyler
cool.
Feller
You can DM Tyler Feller.
DM me. Yeah.
That'd be
It's not something it's not an advertisable product that we have, but it's, something.
But it was mind blowing when you showed me. I was like, wow, who knew all this stuff is out there?
I created a whole report for you and all of those.
Yeah. And Tyler actually produces this show with Zach McAnulty, which is it's been amazing for me because I've had all these words on my life. I used to be on radio for 20 years, but I don't have the bandwidth in my current schedule to actually do this podcast. And so you came along and said, this should be one of your steps.
That's one of the things we did. We built a studio. We invested a
huge.
lot of money, a lot of resources and time and talent and people volunteering even to come pull it off. And people like you and Jess and a few other people actually get an opportunity now to have a home-based studio that you guys can come in and use when you're in town. And she's taking off with her podcast world, and now you're doing the same.
It's just been so amazing. But again, it's that pioneering thing when you see a need and you solve it. It's been such a huge gift. So you, in all your businesses and all the stuff that you're doing, You are hosting things. You've got so many different businesses. How do you stop and listen to the Holy Spirit during the day when you're doing all this marketplace ministry? How does that look practically for you, for somebody else to learn from?
Well, there's a scene in the Bible in 1 Samuel where Samuel's just a little boy.
I love that.
And he actually is learning to discern and hear the voice of God. And he would say a prayer, "Speak, Lord, your servant is listening and ready to respond." And I started saying this prayer. Well, he said, "Speak, Lord, your servant is listening." And I added the "and ready to respond" part. But I started saying this prayer every single day.
Wow.
And then I had to practice it. And so there was a story that happened. It's kind of like Dollar General, but it was a store called Fred's. And it was all over.
Where was that?
It's all over little towns in rural America. It doesn't exist anymore. The chain went out of business, and I think like Dollar Tree or somebody bought it. But in our town, we had a Fred's. There weren't very many other stores. And I was doing this sermon where I wanted people to like tie their sins to a helium tank balloon and let their sins fly away, just kind of like an object lesson thing. Yeah. So I went down to our local Fred's, and there was a college student working. And I was like, "Hey, man, do you happen to have any helium tank?" And I knew him. He was from a Catholic background, wasn't involved in church, was going to school for something in the sciences, and was kind of on the fence, like, is God real or not? Yeah. He didn't have a relationship with the Lord. But I knew him from some of the outreach stuff that we had done. And so he's kind of helping me, and he goes and talks to the manager and said, "Hey, do we happen to have a helium tank here?" Because he's wanting one. And the manager actually laughed and was like, "Ha, ha, ha. We haven't had one in 10 years. And it was that moment, like we're talking about, where the Lord just comes in and speaks. And I said, "That's okay. You'll have one tomorrow." I don't know what got into me. It was just like for me, being yielded to the Spirit, being willing to speak when he says speak. And I'd kind of forgot about that moment. But at the same time, the next day, the young man sent me a text, said, "Hey, you need to get down to Fred's." And I was a pastor in a small town. So like, usually if like somebody's injured, they'll have me come down there, like, I didn't know what it was. It's like somebody needs something. So I'd kind of forgot it was the helium tank thing. But when I get to the store, he's like, "You're never going to believe it." He said, "Our truck comes on Tuesdays," and the truck come and unloaded, and he started to pull away. But the driver got out and came over and said, "Hey, you forgot one thing." And he throws it in the air and he catches it. And it's a box that's the helium tank balloon thing for like birthday parties. And so he's like, "This is for you." And I was like, "You know what that means? You're going to be at church tomorrow." And he came to church that Wednesday night service, and then he never missed a Sunday again until he went off to college. And when he went off to college, he would go sit in the front row of his church and send me a picture every week. And this went on for like a year of him like literally never missing church. So I took the box and I wrote his name inside of the box, and I kept it in my office just as a little memento of like, when you're yielded to God and you're learning to discern his voice, that's how you do it. So it started with doing stuff like that. And I have a bunch of those stories. Like, people would call it miraculous, but I love what Roland Baker said, because I had him on the show. He's like, God does miracles every single day. We just recognize them. Yeah. And when you learn to recognize it, you can lean into it, and then you discern like, what's my emotion, what's my will, what's God's will, it's hard to separate those things. Yeah. And I don't do it perfectly, but the journey that I've been on, and I've had a number of years of practice in that, is to discern the difference. And so the principle's the same in business, where it could be like a really great idea, but if it's not breathed on by the Lord, you don't want to be a part of it. And it works the same way.
I love that, because when we're teaching people in our school, in our life school, and I know you do this in Spirit School, we teach people, when you are trying to learn to discern the voice of God, whether it's in marketplace or for your family, or you're in school, or you're doing ministry, or you're teaching, whatever it is you're doing, pay attention when you get an unction from the Lord. Pay attention to how you were just saying that. How is your mind? How's your body? How, like, the space that you're in when you receive that information. Yeah. If you pay attention to how you are in that moment, you will know when the Lord is speaking to you more often. Yeah. So there's a thing that happens with me when I hear the Lord. I'm kind of checked out. Like, I'm a super present person. I'm very like animated, and I love people, and I just love, life. But when I'm listening to the Lord, I'm a little bit like, people always think I'm staring at them, but I'm actually staring past them. Yeah. You're just like, trying to not have any influence other than the Lord. It's just a little bit of a checked out thing, but you kind of have to learn that. Yeah. And when you're in as many fast-paced businesses as you are, where there's a lot of communication and not a lot of silence, that's got to be tricky. You have to have been trained by the Lord
And usually not a lot of
learned.
time.
I know that about you.
Yeah. So
Not a
even
lot of
if you're in a boardroom with an executive team and you have 20 minutes to make a decision and there's a great idea, but you're not feeling the Lord on it, you know, it's like there's bravery and boldness and courage that's attached to that.
Yeah.
You've got to have the wisdom of the Lord, and what you say has to resonate or not, because there's going to be consequences if you go against the consensus of an idea. So there's a lot that's in, but it reminds me in Acts chapter 4 when, you know, Peter and John in Acts 3 are walking down the road and there's a guy on the side of the street and they pray for him and the guy's healed and they get arrested and then they're in jail. And Peter is like the tuna salesman that they've known before, and he's been MIA for 3 years, and all of a sudden he's back on the scene doing crazy stuff. But then he gives this eloquent speech, and it causes all of the leaders to be like, we know this guy because during breaks at the courthouse, we'd go and get our lunch from him, and he doesn't talk like that. 100%. He sounds like he went to etiquette school and has had an education from Harvard all of a sudden, and they let him off. And they said he had been with Jesus. We let him off because he had been with Jesus. And then he goes back and tells the synagogue, and they're all cheering, and the church multiplies, and they go out and do incredible things. But it was on the back of a bold move that he would yield to the Holy Spirit, said something that clearly wasn't him, and it actually caused the authority at the time to recognize that Jesus was in the midst of it.